解字幕啊。
何をやってもまるでダメ。生きてく自信がね。世界中からブーイングが聞こえる。どこまで落ち込んでんだよ。
係啦，真係做 exposure 啦。好，咁 exposure。
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to have last lecture in group work this year, and also my last lecture at CTU. Okay, so group members be specific behavior through some theories or through some. I will Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to have last lecture in group work this year, and also my last lecture at CTU. Okay, so we are going to have two lectures together because I haven't finished lecture 11 and 12. So what I'm going to do today, I will talk about lecture 11 and 12 together. So today we don't have any guests today, but I just want to have a summary on what you have came across, the few guest presentation. We have first guest from Jacqueline, who talk about the use of animal to work with a group of hidden youth. Okay, so I think it is a very innovative means to engage those who are involuntary clients. So I think the most important thing that we need to learn from her sharing is to use some very creative means, including animals, to help engaging your clients. So it doesn't mean that you have learned about group work and you must run your group in a room, within a room, and all the chairs are set in a circle, and then you start talking and you are running the group like this. No. So you can have a lot of activities, you can have lots of things to work with those clients that you are very good example about how to use some means, for example, to work with the involuntary clients. So other means that I have came across, which is not mine, which is not done by myself. I have seen some agency, they are using the video games. Okay, nowadays a lot of young people like video games, and actually you can start with the game and then engage them first before you start anything on your group work. Okay. And some of those I have also came across. I've also seen some introduction by some elderly service. They are using the video games, which have some kind of exercise to work with the elderly person. Okay, to work with the elderly on by using all those exercising games for them. And actually, the elderly find it was fun and they like to do it. And you can also help engage them first. And you can also use as a means of intervention for elderly. Okay, so I think what Jacqueline has brought to you was something that you can use as a means to engage your client, especially you're working with a group of involuntary clients. And she also mentioned about some of the ways how you are going to handle some difficult situation. I think that is very practical and you can learn. And what I'm going to do today, I will also talk about some of this as well, so that you know how to handle such a difficult situation. And then we have sharing from Jackie, who talk about a social goals model. So I think what Jackie has done is a typical example of a social goals model that what we are happening nowadays in Hong Kong. And you can also try to use what he has done. He used dancing, he used some other, actually he used a lot of other things like boxing and things like that. To help engage his clients in the first place. And then after the group, after some training, and then he worked with them to do some voluntary service or go to a competition or go to a game which is have some kind of competition to enhance their self-esteem. And what is so special about Jackie's project was his engagement of the ethnic minorities. Okay, so he talks about the essential thing that we need to work with when we are working with ethnic minorities, especially when we are working with those who have their religion, they are having some time doing fasting and they are not allowed to go out. They need to stay at home and things like that. So we need to take into consideration of the cultural diversity of Hong Kong, which is nowadays Hong Kong is very culturally diversified. I think what Jackie has done is also very helpful for you to learn to use a social goals model. So normally we'll group a group of clients together, and then we'll try to use some community means to help them to achieve and to enhance their self-esteem whatsoever. So I think you can also learn from that, from his presentation about how to run a social goals model. And then we have Louis, who talk about a cognitive behavioral approach in secondary school, which is also very useful, particularly when you graduate. You are very, very likely to work in a school social work setting because it use or the need about more than 1,000 social worker ASW in school social work setting nowadays. So I think you've got a lot of job opportunities there, and I think his example is very typical. It's also a typical group that we are running nowadays in any secondary school on a cognitive behavioral approach in helping those clients who have tendency of anxiety, depression, and things like that. So I think Louis has given you a very typical example of using a remedial model. Okay, remedial model social work, which we are using some therapeutic approach to help our clients. So, and then we have last week we have colleagues from Society of Rehabilitation from Offenders. So you know how to use the peer group we can use to run a self-help group or one of reciprocal model in which we are enhancing the clients to help each other, especially in those very difficult or special target population, for example, offenders, for example, if they are cancer patients, if they are elderly dementia, they have dementia themselves, or they have a lot of chronic illness, or they're drug addicts. It is very important that we need some kinds of help by themselves, because as I've mentioned, it's hard for us to get through every single difficulties, especially those with cancer and those with drug abuse. We can't by ourselves to abuse drugs, and then we try to work with them. It is really ridiculous in thinking like that. So what we need to do is to actually help those clients who have this kind of experience to help themselves. So this is one of the typical group that is happening to use a reciprocal model. And what is so important that brings us to know, as I've mentioned, and as this is also demonstrated by different speakers or different guests, we normally couldn't just sit there and ask them to come, and then we use a circle, and then we start talking with each other, and then we run a group like this. So nowadays we need a lot of activities. We need a lot of, for example, in social goals model, we need the help from some competition. We need to have some kind of, for example, what Jacqueline has done. She will invite some volunteers with their pets to come. So we have different kinds of activities to engage our clients in the first place. So it is very important. And when you work with them, it is also very important that you are not only sit there and talk about this. You have make sure that you have a lot of activities that you're attracting their attention, and you're engaging them, and all those activities are age appropriate, and they are fun in engaging in this, and they can learn something out of this. Even what Louis has talked about. He will use some movie, some video clips, things that is making the cognitive behavioral therapy group, which is very interesting. So that is what are the differences that we have with a psychologist or a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. They also want the same group, or a nurse who want the same kind of groups, I can tell you, in community, and also in some hospitals, day hospitals, or in some kind of nursing homes. They are running the same kinds of activities. So what are the difference of social work professionals to run these groups and a healthcare professionals who run this group? They will normally follow a menu, and then they will run it just like sitting there, and they will start talking, educating, and things like that. And what are the difference of a social workers doing is we spend a lot of time engaging our clients. We will teach concept, but we'll teach it in a very creative ways. For example, we'll use video, we'll use some comics, we'll use some activities to bring out our message rather than just sit there. And even we are running a group, we also have a lot of different kind of activities that is inside. So I think what the guest has brought to you are these messages. So I just make a summary on what I could conclude from those guests speaking, and I hope you also can learn something out of it, and you have some kind of conclusion from it as well. Okay, just like me. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the group developments, which is, I think I have also came across a little bit when I talk about the group dynamics. So when we talk about the group dynamics, which is difficult not talking about group developments. And now I will talk more about the group development and how we as a group worker, how we are going to manipulate. So the most important thing is we are going to use the group dynamics and group stages of development, not sitting there passively waiting for it to happen, and then we see the phenomenon, and then we say that, oh, it is the group is like this, it's now in this stage, so what? Okay, so as a group worker, we need to think about the so what. Okay, so what I would like you to do is you should have such kind of ability and talk about so what, so what. So I see this is a storming stage, so what? Okay, so what I should do. Okay, and what you should do is difficult to say. There's no one single solution to this question. But what you should do should stick clearly to your group objective. So it matters how you are going to use the group dynamics to achieve your objective, and that is the most important point. Okay, so what are the things that we need to do today? So we will talk about the key issues in group development stage. So first of all, we need to understand the differences in natural versus formed groups. So what is natural groups? Natural groups, that means it happens just naturally. For example, in an office, we were a group, so it just happened naturally. We don't know why we are there, but eventually we were there, and just the employer just employed you, and you were asked to work together. That is a natural group. For example, you just know each other from the social media. You're all having same kind of interest. For example, you like hiking, and then you post a lot of photos about your hiking experience and things like that, and eventually you got lots of friends. Okay, so you start becoming a group. Okay, so what is this? Okay, so what is it? Okay, so so if you've got any personal chats, so please use your personal information. Okay, ways of communicating with each other. Sorry about that. Okay, and so we need to understand if this is a natural group. So the group is going to develop in a very natural way, and it will also go through all the different stages by itself. Of course, there's no one single worker there, and there's no one people there to work and manipulate the situation and to achieve some particular goals. So you may just come together. So it just happened that you are there, just like what I make up the example. You like hiking, so all of you are going there, and then you just talking with each other, and then you just formulate a group yourself. So your friends. So this is a natural groups. So you will also go through all the stages as well. So you may come together, don't know each other, and then you know each other, and then you have a honeymoon period in which you know each other, you like each other, and then later on is a storming stage, and then some of you may quit the group because I'm no longer your friend or whatsoever, because of some kind of issues or some kind of conflicts, and then there's a power struggle and things like that, and eventually your group will become stable. That's a natural group. A natural group will also get through all the stages as well. So a formed group is purposely formed. Okay, the group is purposely formed. Okay, and okay, so you want, anyone would like to say something? Okay, no problem. You want to say something, just let me know. Okay, I'll let you say to the class. Okay. Okay. So so if form the groups is different because you form with purpose, and that is different. Okay, that is different. You purposely form this group. You have a particular purpose of forming this group. You have an objective behind, and you are going to use the group to do some good thing to the clients, and that is from the groups, okay, which is very different. And you and it also goes through all these different stages, but at the same time, we are going to manipulate, we are going to use all these stages to achieve the goals, okay? And there is also a difference in development across models. In different, I'll talk about different models later on, and they will also have different developments across models, but actually they are going through the similar stages. And there is also a very important point when we talk about all these developmental stages. We also need to understand how we are going to diagnose the group and how these individual members are affected by the group stages, okay? How the individual members are going to affected by the individual stages and how we are going to use the group process. We are using the group process to help them to grow. And we also need to take into consideration of their developmental stage. For example, if we are working with a group of clients in teenagers, we also need to take into consideration of their developmental stages. They may need a lot of peer relationship and things like that, which we need to understand, and we need to understand their maturity, and they may not be able to handle a lot of conflicts by themselves, and we need to step in, for example, lots or a little bit more than grown-ups, adults, okay? For adults, we may just need to stand behind and just let them to solve by themselves. So we need to also to understand their developmental stages as well, okay? So for example, for those kids, for those primary school kids, or those kindergarten kids, we may need to intervene a little bit more because they don't have that kind of sophistication to sort out all issues by themselves. So we need to help them a lot more, okay? So different models, I think some of you may be very familiar, especially those who come from associate degree. You may have a lot of information about this. I'll go through it very quickly, so don't worry, okay? So you may, this is one of this model of group development developed by Sari and Galinsky, who talk about group is viewed as an influence system and an effective vehicle for individual change. So the writer would talk about the group process is going to help individual change, which is what we are supposed to do if we are organizing a group. So the first phase is an origin phase, getting started, establish common objectives. The second phase is formative phase. So they will have a lot of similarity, mutuality, initial commitment, personal ties. Semi-group structure, so the group may form yet not at this time, but the structure is not fixed yet. So as a group worker, you have a lot of rooms to determine what is going to happen in this group. So if you would like to introduce any norms, so you need to mold it. Okay, so that's you are going to do a lot of reinforcements. So that reinforce those behavior that you want and the things that you don't want in this stage, so that the group is going to run in the way that you like to have. And then you come to an intermediate phase 1, which you need to clarify the purpose, goal, direction. And then revision phase, challenge existing structure, modification of group goal and operating procedures. So when you are doing all this, reinforcements, and you are making the structure, and you are telling them about the goals and telling them about norms and what are the goals that you would like them to do and what are the goals that you don't want them. You may have some challenges from the group and also some challenges questions from the group members as well, which you need some modification, and you need to have some kind of group goals, modify of group goals, and modify what it's going to do and operating procedures in this stage. And then it comes to intermediate phase 2, high level of integration and stability. After this, just like a storming stage, and then it comes to a phase where you have integration and stability. So everyone, those who don't like it, they may go, and eventually all those who like it will stay. And you have a high level of integration and stability. And then the group after that will go on to a maturation phase, in which the stabilization of group structure, group purpose, so it's all structured and is stabilized, and then it can effectively respond to internal external stress comes to the group. Okay, so and then to the termination phase. Okay, so this is what Sari and Galinsky model. Okay, so another writer, Garland Jones and Colony, and they have a different 5 stages of group development, which is also very common. Okay, some of you may also use this in your practicum, or you may use it when you become a social worker. Peer relation, power and control, which is just similar to what previously has talked about. Intimacy, and then differentiation and separation. Okay, so it also come like this. They are not familiar with each other, and they are struggling for power and control, and struggling for what is right or wrong, and what should be done in this group. And then when all those struggle are gone, and then they become intimate, they become knowing each other, and then differentiation, that means they can do different roles, they can division of labor, and then they can achieve some kind of goals that the group is supposed to do. And then when it becomes time for them to end the group, it will be separation time. Okay, so as mentioned by Jackie, I think I can say a little bit more. He was talking about running the group for so many years, okay, 10 years or whatsoever. But I think what is happening is we will normally have one period. For example, this group will last for 8 months or 10 months or whatsoever. Okay, just take for an example, and then after that we may stop a little bit, and then we'll run another stage for another or 1 or 2 years and things like that. Okay, so nowadays we are running in that kind of mode. Okay, sometimes we will frame it just like a training session, or for example, the first stage or preliminarily we have a basic stage, dancing class, and then we have intermediate class, and then we have advanced class and things like that. Okay, so we will do this, okay, to use different stages, and actually the group may not be going through all the stages in one particular time slots. You may just go on. Okay, so we need to see how the group is going on, especially if they are just coming from all around the world, all around the community, and they don't know each other at the first place. And then you may need a little bit more effort in getting them to know each other and enhancing their intimacy and things like that. And this is the most common, which we talk about a lot, the Tubman's model: forming stage, storming stage, norming stage, and performing stage. Okay, so the forming stage is like this. So everyone comes together, they don't know each other. And then the storming stage, struggling for the power, and then they're struggling for the norms of the group. And then after that, it comes to the norm. So everyone is stay together and they have their own bonding. And then it may come to a joining in this stage, or also in the storming, it also have the possibility after the storming stage, or we don't like each other and we should break up, and it's a joining. Okay. And after the norming stage, and then the group can go to a performing stage. Okay, just like social goals model. So you may form, use Jackie's example. It may be a dancing class or dancing class, and then we don't know, every member don't know each other, and they may get through the stage of power struggle, and then what norms in the group. What is expected, what is not expected, and then go to the norming stage. So everyone is happy about the norm, and they are going to prepare to go to a performing stage in which they could do a task, which is the competition at last. Okay, so this is the Tubman's model. So what are the things that we need to take care when we use this kind of model? I think what the model has given us is a kind of language for social workers, okay, for you to understand what is happening to this group. And it also provides us a very common language among professionals of social workers in case you are handing over to another social workers. You may leave the agency, and then you may have another social workers who is coming to take over your work, and then it gave us a very good language, and we can tell the others, oh, this is the group is in a forming stage, norming stage, and then we know what is happening. Okay, we know what it is. So the first of all, it's very good for us to have a common language, okay, in how to name this group. So, but we need to understand the shortcoming of using this kind of description, because the group is a conceptualized things, and it is not real. Okay, it is something conceptual, cognitive level, right? And it may not really happening just as what the theories are talking about. So it may be a circular. That means it's come round and round. So it may not go. It go to 1 to 4 stages, and then it go back to the first stage. Okay, as I said. You may encounter another phase of the group, okay, or another phase of the training or whatsoever, which is you go round and round, and a looping pattern. It may not be able to get through the storming stage and go back again. Okay, so you need some recruitment, and then you need to have some new members to come in and things like that. So it may not be linear, and sometimes it may goes very fast to performing stage, but eventually it goes back again. Okay, and so sometimes it may jump from one stage and skip another stage into another. So the sequence stage theories has such a shortcoming, which in reality we have a lot of different things that could happen, okay, in reality. So, but I think the most useful thing is it provides a language for us to talk about, to describe what is happening to the group. And it's much more easier when you talk to your supervisor. So if you do supervision with your supervisor, you can easily describe what it is, and it's very easily for us to understand. And we have a common language, and we know what you mean by the group is now in the storming stage and things like that. So we know it very well. Okay, so I think it is the most important things. Okay, so another is a recurrent stage perspective, and it talks about groups tend to develop in stages, and changes and movement are ongoing and necessary in groups. And as I mentioned, nowadays we may have a very short-term groups that it may just don't really happen. Okay, all the stages don't really happen. It may stage in the group initial stage. Okay. recurring stage means that very often for groups must return to previous stage and revisit and pass it and going through forward, mean going backward. Okay, so that means just like this. External change may also cause the group to jump ahead. Okay, so both external and internal change make it necessary for group to revisit previous phase or jump ahead. Okay, so the sequential stage may not be happening, but recurrent stage may, which is more near to reality. Okay, so how we are going to use group interventions to enhance the growth of each members. So what are the considerations when we are considering the objective, or when considering the things that we are going to do? We need to think about what are the implications do such changes have for individual group members. For example, if we are working with cognitive behavioral therapy group, and so we are looking for some changes. For example, there are changes in the irrational thoughts. So what are the implications? So why it is so important for them to change, and how this is going to help the group, if the group has such changes, or how it is going to impact on individual group members. So if they have a task that for them to do, and they have such kind of changes, so what is this is going to impact to the individual members, or they are all going for competition dancing. Use dancing again. They're all going for dancing, and then what are the implications for such change? We need to know. So how we are going to know? We need to think about the objective of our group. Okay, so if the objective of our group is going to enhance the self-esteem of the group of girls, for example, just take Jackie's group, and then we need to think about what are the things that this group has to do in order to achieve such an objective. And each task that they're going to do is going to affect the individual change. Okay, so how do we know if such changes are needed? Okay, so how do we know? How can we formulate what kind of changes? So what we need to do is to make a very good need assessment. Okay, so first of all, we need to think about the developmental task of that particular group. And then we need to think about what are their needs, okay, and how these needs are going to meet their developmental task. How these needs, if these needs are met, so how they are going to benefit from this. Okay, so take for example, if they are really use Jackie's group as an example, they are ethnic minority young people. They are getting through a lot of discrimination, or being looked down when they are living in culture which is, they are not majority, they are minority in the culture. So they may have a lot of needs to enhance their self-esteem, because they may be looked down upon by Chinese, they look down upon by the teachers, by their classmates. So how we are going to enhance their self-esteem is to do something that's out of their interest, and they could really demonstrate their power, demonstrate their ability, so that everyone knows their ability. Then we notice that this kind of change is very essential. So we need to have a very good need assessment. Okay, so how do we do a good needs assessment? We first use the developmental stages. We have a knowledge in social work, in family perspective, system theory whatsoever, to make sense of the client. So one of the the things I think I've mentioned one of the framework that is very easy and systematic for us to make assessments of the group is to use Bradshaw's typology of needs. So what Bradshaw suggests was to use normative needs, felt needs, comparative needs, express needs. Use these four kind of needs to describe the needs of that group. So comparatively, for example, there may be lack of chance to opportunities to develop themselves. From a normative, that means from a professional perspective, we notice the developmental tasks, we notice the discrimination, we notice that the lack of chance to express themselves, we notice their lack of confidence. We notice from research that young people who lack of confidence will usually be underachiever in school, which is from research. Underachiever in school, they may be they may have a high risk of some antisocial behavior. Low self-esteem may have high risk for depression or some kind of mental illness. So that's why we need to intervene. Okay, so I've thought about something about next week's quiz. Okay, so you need to make a really good assessment of needs. Okay, so you use Bradshaw's typology of needs, and then you can systematically describe what that group of people is actually need. Okay, so and then we know what kind of changes we are looking for. Okay, so and then we can make priority as well. So how we are going to prioritize which kind of needs. So first of all, you need to think about your intervention. So how your intervention is going to help this group of clients, and what is the ultimate goal. For example, what Lewis has done, he did a group for clients with depression or anxiety, and then of course the primary goal is to reduce the anxiety and depression. Okay, of course you are not of course the other things are very secondary goals. Okay, they may enhance their self-esteem, or we are enhancing their irrational, less thinking about irrational thoughts. So that is another thing, or that is the means that we are going to do. And we can also make it as an indicator, but we are not put it as the most priority. The most important things that we are looking for is that they really reduce the level of depression and anxiety, and that is what we are looking for. So we need to prioritize what are the big things that we would like to know, and then there may be some secondary goals, which goes along with this goal, okay, eventually, okay? So we also need to think about, so we make changes one time or several at the same time, or is it possible for me, for you as a worker to induce such changes, and why? You may not be able to induce such changes, but you may facilitate these changes, okay? So what I mean is, especially in a support group, or in a reciprocal model, sometimes I see what's their needs. I know what they would like to, I know what they need to achieve, but eventually I'm not the person who can do this. So what I should do is to facilitate the group members to help each other to talk about this through the sharing and through some tangible help, okay? And as what have mentioned last week, maybe just accompany them, okay? Accompany them to go to restaurant, to be fun, and then through all these accompany, who is working together, getting through together, and we are looking for some changes. When a person is being accompanied, being understood, and they would become more and more better, okay? So when it is suitable to induce such changes and how to do it, so we need to think about all this. We are focusing a lot on the therapeutic adjustments. So if you are doing a therapeutic group or remedial group, so our therapeutic adjustment group psychotherapy, just like what Louis has done. So he was using a cognitive behavioral approach. So he will talk a lot about cognitive, emotion, and behavior, and how these are affecting each other, and how these are affecting the group process, and how these are affecting individual changes. So interpersonal and emotional growth. So interpersonal learning groups, for example, you are helping clients to have some interpersonal changes in their ways to interact with people. So how to express your politeness, how to express cooperation, helping teamwork with each other for the, for example, special needs children who need all these, okay? So you may be change-oriented groups, which is therapeutic in nature, okay? So you may use some support or self-help to have some help some addiction people, okay? So what I'm talking about here is that we can induce changes in therapeutic group. We can induce changes in support group. We can also induce changes in social goals models group, okay? But it all depends. These are the ways that we are going to achieve this, okay? It doesn't really matter. It is upon your choice of the kind of group, or how you are going to choose may be affected by the agency or affected by funding body, which I have mentioned a lot of time. It's going to affect you. Which kind of things that you are going to choose, or what are the means that you choose, okay? For example, you're working in a community development setting, and majority of my time is working with social goals model. So we seldom do therapeutic model, we seldom do support group. But on the other hand, if you work just like what we have came across last week, what have been done by Agua and his colleagues, maybe majority of their work are support group and self-help group, which is dominated in that kind of setting. So it very much depends on the objective of your agency. It very much depends on the objective of your group and what you want to achieve. And it doesn't really matter. And I can tell you, whatever you choose, it should be inducing changes to your clients, okay? I should go a little bit faster. Group psychotherapy. So you may use remedial model, and you can use group dynamics to help the members, as I've mentioned a few weeks ago about all the skills. Sorry that I can't really demonstrate because of the we are using Zoom. But what I've mentioned a few weeks ago about we are using, for example, the skills of empty chair. We are using the skills of double. We are using the skills of future projection, time regression, things like that. So all these are group counseling skills, which we do it in a group, and it eventually will help each other to learn themselves. In desktop group, we may use some role play, psychodrama, just like what I mentioned empty chair, okay, that we can use. Cognitive behavioral therapy group. So I think what Louis has demonstrated to you, the use of some kind of helping them to get rid of irrational thoughts. Interpersonal learning, just like some role playing of video, things like that. So I'm not going to talk a lot. Self-help group, so you may combine the energy and efforts to overcome the problem, and then through helping with each other using the resources of each other to help them in the group. Okay. So how we are going to use the group to modify the group condition that the members can achieve to have effects on individual members. So we may assign some tasks for the group to perform. Okay. We may let the individual to have a considerable power in the group. Okay. For example, he or she is assigned to be a group leader, subgroup leader, whatsoever. Okay. So the role in the group can actually enhance their self-esteem, their self-efficacy, and then eventually you may help them fulfill critical functions in the group. For example, some will be much like calculation, like mathematics. So he or she may be the treasurer, okay, of the group, things like that. So we can use all these to help a single member. One-to-one interaction, that means why we are using one-to-one interaction. That means if there's something happening in the group, so sometimes we just will pick that group members up and then we will do it one-to-one interactions. We need to take into consideration of these. So we need to take into consideration if we are taking that person out and is working. I think what Jacqueline has demonstrated and Louis has also talked about some group dynamics is how we are going to add that benefit the member. So I think we need to think about we are benefiting the member. Whether if we're doing this, there will be serious consequence, crisis nature. Okay, the negative consequence for members, negative consequence to the group. So if you are just talking to the individual group members privately, so will there be any negative consequence for he or she? Would that be harming others? Confidentiality and things like that. So we need to take into consideration of all this. So normally, I will encourage a lot that if you are running a group, if there's an issue, which a lot of people know, this issue is not personal issue, which is a group issue. For example, there's a subgroup or there's something that is happening in the group, hindering the development of the group. I think it is best to put this back to the group and use the group dynamics. Okay, so all the group members are going to discuss about this and resolve a problem, a solution, rather than using individually seeing some members and then you are doing this, you're solving the problem privately and you are not letting other members, you're just picking up some members to know this and you are not really helping discussing this openly, and which is very important. Okay, if we would like to resolve the problem in a group so that all the group members can be benefited. Okay, rather than using some individuals and doing it privately. So we can use some kind of direct means of control. Of course, worker can be a central person, and you can be the person who use direct means of control to settle the situation, or you can use your way to or your power to do the things, but it very much depends. Of course, if it is happening in a group of primary school student or it is a kindergarten kids group, you may need to intervene a lot. Okay, rather than just let them to resolve it by themselves, because they don't have that kind of sophistication to achieve problem solving. So what are the individual target of group intervention? For example, changing some irrational beliefs that are the IBs, irrational beliefs, okay. A lot, individual perception, not only, for example, thinking negatively, they may perceive other person. For example, if we are running a couples group, we may have couples perceiving the others very negatively. So these are also something that we could change. Change individual conditions. So for example, we need to change their interpretation, confrontation, attributions, for example, how they're attributing, what is going to happen, things like that. Change individual facts, which means that individual emotion, relaxation, breathing, mindfulness things. Change individual actions, behavior, like, for example, the role models, and help individuals solve problem and structure members' role, etc. Okay, so these are the individual changes. So some of the situation here, if there are some dysfunctional role, for example, if the too quiet or too noisy or too disturbing in the group and things like that. These are some of the dysfunctional roles. Okay, so if it is not firmly established, we may use direct means of influence. We may stop it. We remind them, okay, not to do it. Okay. So if the how we are going to use a strong user support, for example, for a silence member, we will encourage them to participate, approving a norm of acceptance and concern for each other, and using activities to involve member in a positive way. So we can use some of the ways to enhance the to remove the dysfunctional roles for those who are very disturbing, too quiet. So we can use a lot of these techniques. Okay. A member becomes stereotyped into a negative role. Okay, so if a member is always scapegoated, scapegoat during the sessions, or in being teased, so you can active and directly confront the group, okay, during the situation, and move the discussion towards clarifying the process that lead to the situation. So we may clarify what we should do in this situation, rather than teasing the others, rather than looking down on the others. We should support each other and things like that. And these are what we are looking for in this group and things like that. Okay, so we can use all this to help the group establish norm. If there is a hostile and disruptive behavior, so 3 main ways to handle very hostile, disruptive, allowing members to continue while seeking to ignore or minimize the effect of disruptive behavior. So what I would do if that kind of behavior is not that disruptive to a very big extent, so I may allow it and just ignore it, just not attending to it. So this is behavioral approach. If the client or if the group member normally is, for example, primary, secondary school kids, they have a lot of behavior, and we just ignore it, and I'm not going to attend to it, and eventually they will die down. Okay, eventually. We are not reinforcing it. Sometimes if you are talking about it, if you are saying that, oh, please stop it, and things like that, sometimes we are negatively reinforcing. Okay, so you are saying that this is not good, but eventually you are reinforcing the behavior. So we will just ignore it, and sometimes we just confront the members We are saying that it is not expected to do it, especially in the early stage of the group. Okay, you can do this. Okay, and have other group members beside leader confront the disruptive behavior. So you may also encourage other members to say what do you think if there's something happen like this in the group. What do you think? Would you like to do you like it or not, and things like that. So you can use the group members' views to talk about the disruptive behavior. Okay, and you may also emphasize the group norm and objective of the group. So these are some of the skills that you may use. Some of the intervention that we are going to use to facilitate personal change. One of the things that I would like to talk about is we need to understand what are the reasons behind all those, let's go back a little bit, hostile disruptive behavior. Okay, so we see the phenomenon. Okay, the phenomenon is like this. So it is there is some disruptive behavior. So we need to think about why there's something happening. So you have to first of all think about there are lots of disruptive behavior, for example, in the group. So why there's a lot of disruptive behavior, or why this kid has a lot of disruptive behavior? Would it be possible that it's because of the group is too boring? Okay, so the group is too boring, or the group is too difficult. Okay, especially I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we heard what Heidi has said. We will have she has came across some of the social workers who are using all those games that was play in primary school, and then bring it back to kindergarten kids to play. And sometimes because their cognitive level is not high enough, sophisticated enough, so sometimes they could not even follow what you're doing. So we need to think about what we need to whether it is really suitable, or whether it is really age appropriate things for them to do that they don't really understand. So that is another reason. So we also need to think about whenever there's some kind of thing that some of the things that we need to understand is why they are doing this, maybe because of some of the personal issue, or because of some of the incidents, some of the person he or she doesn't like in the group or whatsoever. So whenever we see these disruptive behavior, we need to understand the reason behind. Okay, reason behind. So how can we know? You can, of course, you can talk to he or she afterwards, and or you observe more, or you use the group and you ask he or she to talk about. So it seems that you're very annoying in this group. So can you tell me what has happened? For example, in a school setting, you may start the group very late in the afternoon after school at 4:30. Okay, so a lot of them are already very tired. So you need to think about, or they has gone through a very bad day in which a lot of homework pressure, a lot of disagreements with teachers and things like that. They have a lot of things on their back, and that when they come to your group, they may have a lot of grievances, unhappiness during the day. So we must understand the reason behind why this is happening, why there are disruptive behavior. So what are the intervention that we could do to achieve the personal change? We can use the conflict. Okay, so don't afraid of conflict. So I mentioned it a lot of time. So if there are conflicts between group members, we can bring it back to the group. It's a good time for them to understand how to problem solve. So of course, you as a social worker, you must know the problem solving process. I assume that you all know how to resolve a problem or resolve a conflict, which is very simple. You go to Google and then you see what are the problem solving approach. Okay, so you can problem solve whatever things, use that kind of flow, use that kind of approach. So you see positively about the conflicts. Okay, if that's actually happening. Okay, so because there's a lot of good things, help to clarify values, how to evaluate the bonding, accept different points of view. Okay, how releasing the discontents of the group, improving the relationship, and reduce self-centered. So it's good to have conflict. Okay, you see it positively. Okay, a lot of different kinds of conflict. For example, personal conflict, different kind of conflict. So you can see different kind. You can see we must understand what are the conflicts, okay, and what kind of conflicts, okay, and how to resolve it. So advantage and disadvantage intervened by worker. You can see the advantage and disadvantage over here. If it is good for you to demonstrate how to problem solve, and then it is good to do it. Okay, intervene by worker. Non-intervene by worker is a disadvantage. The solution may be worsened and because no guidance from the worker, but it has the advantage that you can let the members to overcome and get through it by themselves. Okay, so it all depends on the maturity of the group. It all depends on how the group is going to do, and the stages of development, and what do you want to achieve in the group when you decide whether you will intervene or not. Okay, so it all depends on your objective, what you would like to do, and what you think you have to do, and things like that. Develop and desirable group culture. So the norms initiated by worker are reinforced by intervention. So you can reinforce the desirable group culture. Okay, for example, you like them to be very to take initiative in answering questions, so you need to give them reinforcements. Okay, you would like to encourage the freedom or encourage a free discussion, so expressing their needs, or they are freely expressing their feeling. So if you like this, you have to reinforce this kind of work among them. Okay. So ineffectively lecture about breaking a rule. So don't lecture them. Don't just talk about them. Okay. So benefit to achieve its purpose. So situation favor change. If the group members have all these in the group, then they will be more easily to experience a change. Their acceptance, altruism, universalization, intellectualization, reality testing, transference in action. Okay, so if they all got these in the group, then it will favor the changes. So I'm not going into details, so you can use it when you are running a group. Okay, especially I think acceptance is very important. Universalization is very important because all the people come here and then they know that I'm not the diverse person. So it is always the effects when I run parenting groups. When I said to them during the evaluation, I will ask, so what do you think are the most important changes to do? A lot of parents will say, oh, I'm not the only person who face this kind of problem, so I'm not alone. So this kind of feeling is actually very enough and very therapeutic. So you don't need to get any changes for them. You don't need to use any cognitive behavior approach, social learning whatsoever. When they find that they're not alone, okay, they're being understood, they're being accepted, okay, and they've got chance to ventilate, okay, ventilation, and actually they already think that they are more released, okay. So of course, if we've got some intellectualization, that means they know something, they have some reality testing, that means they can actually do something, just like doing a competition. They can spectator therapy, that means they can see what the others are having changed, okay, and they also have some positive change to them, okay. So achieving group purpose through assessment of good group conditions. So you must first understand the condition of the group. You need to understand the stages of group development, your group structure, process, culture, okay, all these things, group boundaries, group climates, and then you can alter the members' condition, modify their behavior, their thinking, then modify their behavior, altering group norms, altering group emotion, and enhancing problem solving. And if you do all this, actually, you are doing some change, okay, to the group. So method of decision making. So this is one of the model, how to make a decision by authority without discussion. Expert member, average of members' opinions. So you may have take an average, or a lot of people will say this and that, and you take a middle. Decision by authority, minority control, majority control, consensus. So all these you can think about when you would like to do a decision making rather than only voting. Okay, you can do a lot of different kind of decisions. So sometimes it's the expert member. For example, you have a member. I remember once I was working with a volunteers group, and they have a member who works in a hotel, and he has a lot of expertise in organizing the activities. So he became the leader when we are talking to how to organize an outing for a group of lone parents in the community, which is, at that time I was working in Sunshine Pro. So we are working with a group of lone parents, and then he just become the lead, and he just gave a lot of suggestions on how to do it in our program. So actually, because he's quite expert in that, so we use different majority control, just like the voting, okay. Minority control, for example, it will be using a subgroup, okay, a subgroup working group on this, and then the minority will make decision, okay. Consensus, so we are talking with each other and we negotiate a consensus, okay. So there's a lot of ways to do it. In using the decision-making methods, their components must be carefully structured. Positive interdependence, promotive interaction. So we need to understand all this, and you are using all this to facilitate the decision-making. Okay, and factors that hinder the group decision-making, all these will happen, okay, just for your reference. And we need to understand, as I have mentioned, we need to understand the phenomenon behind, okay. So if there's a lot of difficulties in making a group decision, so what are these, okay. So you need to think about if there's any decision like this in any things like this in the group that is happening. Okay, so when you understand the reason behind, then you can come up with some kind of solution. Okay. So increased quality of decision making. For example, we are categorizing, organizing, and derive conclusion. We are presenting different position. We are able to give time for people to challenge our points. So we allow time for discussion. We experience conceptual conflict, uncertainty, this equilibrium, and then we conceptualize, okay, and then we have the results, okay. So actually, there's a lot of things happening in the decision-making process, and when we are just grouping a group of, for example, workers or group of volunteers, and these steps are always happening, and it is good to allow time to have all these to go through, rather than just we are just simply we talk about all the suggestions and then we come to a vote. Okay, so that will hinder the quality of decision making, and is also hinder the we are just finishing the task, but we are not helping the members to achieve their goals. Okay, they could not learn in that sense. Okay, so let's stop here for the break, for me to rest my voice, and let's come back at 5:35. Okay. So this is the last bit of the of this course. I will talk about the ending and transition with groups. So this is also very important when we are handling the ending and transition of groups, especially when we would like to evaluate the group successfulness. It is really not at the end of the program or at the end of the group that we are going to do it. We should do it at the beginning. Okay, we should do it at the beginning. We should think about the expected changes and what are we going to do, or what are our objective, whether our objective has been reached, and things like that before we start the evaluating and ending our sessions, okay, or ending our groups. So it's very important. So what we should do in our ending and transition phase, and especially nowadays, we also need one thing is that we need to be accountable. So we need to let people know the effects of our group intervention. And the other thing is some kinds of agency needs. So your agency may like to let people know that you are doing very special, or you're doing very good, so that people know that your agency is doing quite good in that particular area. So there are also some kind of needs that we need to fulfill for the agency. So don't think that it is not my business and I don't really care about this. It is not that realistic, because if you are actually working in that agency and you should supposed to help the agency, you should contribute as part of the agency worker. So you should do whatever you can to help the agency to achieve. Okay, so so what we should do in ending phrase. So it is also important, because I will ask you next week, okay, in the final quiz. So you need to also think about your indicators of the intervention as well. Okay, so you need to think about. Ending phase of group practice. So it is a phase that offers greatest potential for powerful, important work. So don't think that it is not important, and don't think that we can just end it whatsoever. Okay, because a lot of group members will have a lot of emotion, and they may have a lot of thinking about how the group is going on. And in this time is also you can a good chance for you to intervene and to make changes. Okay, so don't miss this chance and don't think that it's not important. So the group members will think about the urgency as they realize that time is little. So they would like to, they also would like to have some change as well, because they invest some time in the group. Okay. For example, for parenting groups, a lot of parents, they need to sacrifice a lot to join your group. They need to ask someone to take care of their kids. They need to spare, or some of them, they need to ask for leave from their job to join your group. So they actually pay to come to your group. So they would like to know some kind of, to get something out of it. Okay. So they sense a little bit of urgency, and the emotional dynamics between group worker and member also heighten this phase. And as they move away from each other, so the termination of the relationship can evoke powerful feelings in both members and workers. So members and workers may have feelings which also need to take care. And ending phase is also important because it also least effective as we missing the meetings, laziness, apathy, acting out, less mature pattern of behavior. So we may have this kind of behavior happening, and but we don't miss it. Okay. So some of the group members reaction: denial, simply forget, clustering band close together, do or none to separate. Okay. Regression, that means especially those treatment group, therapeutic group, they will regret back to the stage where they have problem, and seems that they don't have they have joined the group. It seems that they don't have learned anything. So they attempt to convince the worker that the group is still necessary. So it's also very common. Okay. Recapitulation, a review of past activity and events. So normally what we are going to do at the end of the group, or in the last session, we review what have been done in the group so far. And we will talk about the achievements. So how, what are the things that we have achieved, and we'll look forward. So what after that? So what are you going to do? And so it's very important to recapitulate what we have done, and comparing past events of experience of the group. So they may say that it's very happy when we were going to a camp, or we are doing the going through the competition, or it was very happy, things like that. But now it is not happy because we don't have time. We are not supposed to do anymore. Flights from the reality, missing the meeting. Door-knock phenomenon. That means the client raised a concern again. So they will say that we still have tasks, or we still have concerns, and we could not, you could not stop the group at the moment because they don't want to stop. So we can see a lot of group members' reaction. But I think all these reaction is also will come as if the group members really like the group. Okay, so if they don't like it, or they are forced to come, I don't think they will have a lot of that kind of feeling, they really like to go as soon as possible, okay, if they're forced to come. So group as a whole reaction, groups return to previous level of functioning. That means, as I mentioned, they may have some kind of regression back to the previous, or they're not just like they don't have any intervention. The group sustains its own internal system. That means they're just sustaining what is happening, keeping what is happening, and don't want to move forward. The members tend to withdraw from facilitating each other's participation. They don't want to facilitate the others' participation. They don't want to encourage others to express the feeling. So they may not want to solicit feedback. So they, pretty simply, the interaction will be less. The cohesion may increase because they want to bond together. Members become more helpful. Using familiar behavior, the group decision making may begin to deteriorate. Less functioning, that means pretty simply, okay, they're not functioning as well as in a performing stage, and they just seems like their lack of power, and they don't really want to separate because they know the time is coming to the end. So group termination is a transition from rhythm of work to disengagement. So previously they have a rhythm of work, they have a pattern of work, they are working well, they are working, performing, and they achieve a lot of things. They have done a lot of, in a social goals model, they may have done a lot of volunteers work, and they have been doing things well. And at the end, it's come to a disengagement. And you may be helping them to think about what they have achieved and what individual goals that they have done. They may not be able to talk a lot because they don't want to talk what they have achieved, because if they have achieved things, then it has a good reason to end, right? So earlier theme of loss, dependency, and ambivalence, so come up again, okay? So they have all these difficult loss, dependency, and ambivalence. Sometimes it may arouse their own thoughts or their feelings about the loss of their loved ones, the loss that they have previously in their life, in the family of origin. So what we need to do is revisit the feelings of satisfaction, worth, and accomplishments. And we need to help members look backward and look forward. So what's next? So after completing this group, what's next? And we need to help them. One of the things that we need to do is to help them to transfer their group experience to their real life situation. And that is the most important bit. Don't think that it is normal and this is everyone can do it. And eventually I found that it is not normal for a person to really able to apply what they have learned in a group situation to the reality. So what we need to do is to actually help them. So if you have achieved something, then you need to do whatsoever in the reality when you face such a difficulties, okay? So I think the group worker, you as a group worker should particularly help them to really think about all these experience and how these experience can be transferred to their real life experience, and how this group experience is moralized and affirmed, okay, is very important. So workers' reaction may move back to earlier way of behaving. The workers' own emotion repertoire may be influenced. You also have feeling about termination, especially if this group is you like it very much, or you have put a lot of effort in organizing it. So you may have a lot of feeling as well. So you should aware of your own feeling and prepare to use those feelings. So your feelings would also be able to make changes to the group members. So don't think that your feeling is no good, and don't think that you can withhold your feelings. Be aware of servicing your own emotion. So when you have emotion, that's okay, but you think about whether your emotion or whether your feeling is therapeutic or is helping the group or not. Okay. So if you really think that you don't want the group to end, but eventually because of whatsoever, because of funding, because of whatsoever, so you think about whether your feeling or your ways of thinking is actually helping the group to achieve later on. If that is not therapeutic or if that is not constructive, I think you may need to talk to your supervisor or you talk to your colleagues rather than talking it to your group members. So think about whether your feeling, use of feeling is therapeutic and is constructive or not. Okay. You might acknowledge your own feeling to the group, but you really need to think about this, okay? You may have a natural reluctance to let the group go. You yourself may also have a reluctance to let the group go. You don't really want that group to go yourself. So stage of ending. So Schwartz, 1961, outlined the stages of ending, which we can also see there's a denial. So your clients will denial as what I demonstrate by what we have mentioned. For example, they are not coming. They don't want it to happen. They don't want to see the last session. Okay. So indirect or direct expression of anger. So we have came across some group which some of the groups you've done. Okay, I read some of the records from the practicum students and can see sometimes group members may not want that to end, and they may express some kind of anger or some mourning. That means they are not happy about this. They really find is depressive, or they don't feel that it's a good moment to end. Try it on for size. Consider it carefully in order to decide whether you think it is good or whether you believe it. So you don't really want to believe it. Another really that was quite negative, right? Another thing that may happen is the farewell party syndrome, taking simply those positive. That means they only see the positive side of the group. Okay. So many years ago, I was participating in, I was working as a volunteers in a volunteers group, and when we do the volunteers program, when we do some programs for the elderly, we normally will ask them at the end, oh, do you like it today? What do you think about this? And they will have a farewell party syndrome and say, oh, that was excellent. That was really good. Okay, so so we are using that kind of psychology to make ourselves happier. Okay, so we will ask the participant at that time, oh, so what thing about today? Do you like it? And normally they will say that they like it a lot. Okay, so this is what the ending stage will supposed to happen. So now the members are ending up with a group worker. Hopefully they have experience, caring, supportive professionals. Okay, so they don't want to end. If you did very well and you were very caring and supportive, and actually I didn't do the research, but when I ask some of the clients who join some social welfare service, and I ask them why they liked the service, and actually one of the common point is the caring and support of the worker. Actually, is what they like very much, which is about the skills of the worker, whether the worker is teaching them something or whether the worker has talked about something that they really think led them to have a lot of thoughts, change their life, and which is really rare. But what is very common is the support and the company of the social worker is a very, very common answer to me. As I ask them why you like it, why you like this group, or why you like this program, the participant will all normally say things like that. Okay, and if the group members have developed deep relationship with each other, so they don't want to end the relationship, and group members may not accept that the group is going to end and its designated period and deny ending of the group. So if they have a very good relationship with each other, and they have good relationship with you, and then they will have a denial. Anger is denial is often followed by anger about the ending. Okay, so they were angry about it. So emerge direct and indirect forms. Often focus on group worker. Okay, feeling that the worker is abandoning them, especially if you are changing jobs. The members may think that you are abandoning them. Okay, and they may have some kind of disagreement with the administration of the agency as well. Then you think that, oh, you're not fair, so you shouldn't end the group and things like that. So there may also be conflicts between members of a group during this phase, and its work is in direct way of expressing anger toward the group leader. Okay, so they may indirectly expressing their anger to leaders through having conflicts among themselves. So they're causing trouble. Okay, that means they're causing trouble to the group, and regress back to the stage, and just seems like they have received no intervention and saying that I still need the group. Okay, so adults can express anger by missing the group or through dismissive comments about the value of the group. Okay, they will say something bad about the group. Regression. Okay, so mourning, this is a period characterized by apathy and a general tone of sadness in the group. They're very sad, they're very depressive. So it's a grieving period because it's going to end. So some of the members may remain silent. They look mostly at the fore and not participating in the conversation. Okay, they're not participating. They don't really want the group to end. And trying it on for size, the group members operate independently of the group leader or spend a great deal of time talking about new groups or new group leaders. So they will talk about all this. Farewell party syndrome, as I've mentioned. The group members appear to protect the group by avoiding discussing its negative aspect. So they will avoid discussing any negative about the group. The group leaders may ask for feedback. It's also not unusual for group members to just suggest throwing an actual farewell party, so avoid negative aspect of the group. So they avoid negative aspect, and they would have some good memories about the group, so they don't really want to talk about any negative things about it. So what the group workers should do in the ending stage. So we should bring the ending to the group members' attention early. So if you are ending the group, especially the group which has been last for a very long time, few months, a few years, then you need to let them know that when the group is going to end. And the message should come to the member as after, I think after 2/3, okay, of the group time, and then you should start letting them notice that the group is going to the end. Letting them to have some psychological preparation, and you also manage the expectation. Okay, manage the expectation of the group is very important. Okay, managing them so that they won't have any misconceptions about what is going to happen. So the stage should be pointed out as the group experience them, with the group leader reaching for indirect cues and articulating a process of taking place. So if there's any denial, anger, mourning, so you can articulate it. So you should address it. Okay, you should address the member. You should address there are some mourning, denial, you don't feel like it, and it seems that you really don't want the group to end, and so on. So you should address these feelings directly. No need to cover it up, or you don't need to really think that just seems nothing has happened, or you should really directly address the point and share your feeling. If that feeling, as I've mentioned, you have to think about whether your feeling is constructive or is therapeutic. If that is so, you can share your feeling as well. So because the group ending has a meaning for you as the group worker as well, so you can bring your feelings to the group. And discussion of the ending feeling should be encouraged, and the group worker participate fully in exchange for positive and negative reactions. So you can exchange your thinking and your thoughts about it's the end of the group. So what do you think about it? And I see you have some denial, and I can see some of the you don't want it to happen, and you have some anger about this. And I think not only we talk about how we are going to resolve it, I think this is very easy for us to go to the task. So what should we do next? Okay, rather than focusing simply on the task, I would suggest you to really focus on the feeling first. So let's talk about the feeling. Let's talk about what you feel and what you think about the group now. And I think the most important things that we need to do is to help the group members to think about what they have achieved. Okay, what they have achieved, and then talk about the feelings that they have for changing. And it is also a good moment for them. That's why I talk about how they could transfer their experience to real life situation, because it is very important that they should let go of the group, and they should let go of the help among the members, also let go of the help from the social workers, and they should be able to face the reality by themselves, even though it is a hard reality, and even though it is a hard life, they should try it. Okay, they should try it. So I think what you need to do is to really talk about the achievements that they have. For example, they have getting good, not getting improved self-concept, they have a good self-efficacy, they have more self-confidence, which is good in their reality when it is transferable to, for example, their academic work, for example, their relationship with their parents, their relationship with their peers. So all these we can talk about, and all these we could help them to think about what they could apply in that particular situation. So the group leaders should also, group members, be specific as they evaluate their work together. Be specific and focus on the feeling first before you talk about the task. For example, what are we going to do? For example, who is coming next. For example, what the agency would do, what would other groups, would there be other groups, or are you transferring to the other groups, are you engaging the others? So it's very easy. We are going to talk about the task later on, but we should focus on the feeling first. So the group workers should also reach past the feral party syndrome to encourage members to share negative feedback. So we could also encourage them to not just talk about the good things, and you can just talk about what to improve in the future. We are organizing some kinds of groups like this. Okay? So the work of termination, recapitulation, and evaluation is very important. So we need to recapitulation. We think about what we have done and evaluate what we have done. Stabilize the change. I think the change for the group as a whole, and individual changes, which is very important. So nowadays, a lot of workers is very task oriented, and they just want to achieve, and they just want to finish the group, and that's all. And they just lose sight. They just lose sight on individual members' change. Okay, so I think you as a worker, you should also, before coming for the termination session, you should think carefully what are the things that particular group members, group member A, group members B has improved, and that is very important. Okay, and all these improvements should have evidence. Okay, not just your impression, not your own impression. Okay, so not your own impression that the group members has talked a little bit more than before, then it is really not making sense. Okay, so you should have more evidence on what is behind the talk a little bit more than before. Okay, so it has no meaning to say that client A has more speech after the group, and because it will happen because they're more familiar with each other compared with session 1, so they must talk a little bit more than before. Okay. So what are behind? So if client A has achieved a lot of things during the group, and he has gained a lot of confidence, and eventually he could talk a little bit with more than with each other, then that will be a good point. Okay. So principles of separation stage. Initiate the ending process. Okay. So you should, as I've mentioned, about 2/3 of the group, you should initiate the ending process. You should aware of the feelings, which for positive and negative feelings of evaluation. Hold the group to the ending time and its work, and credit members' contribution and accomplishments. So that's very important, what they have accomplished, especially in social goals models group. So they have achieved a lot of things. They have won the competition, or even they didn't won the competition. What they have achieved in the competition, or what they have achieved in the social services. And in a cognitive behavioral group or in a remedial group, you can talk about the individual changes that they have, what they have learned, and what are the things or the key areas or the variables that you intend to see after the group. And you can talk about all these variables. For example, you are having more self-confidence, you have less irrational thoughts and feelings, and you have more problem-solving abilities. So I can see time A, you were able to lead the group, and you give very good suggestions to the group how to resolve the problem in that particular sessions and things like that. Okay, So you can credit their contributions and accomplishments, enables members to transfer their learning. Okay, so transfer the learning to, I think it is very important to the real life situation. Okay, as I've mentioned, how it is going to transfer, for example, their problem solving ability in their family, in their work, in their study as well. Seek or provide procedure for closing the group. For example, we have some programs, we have some structures for leaving. For example, we are writing some cards for each other. We are revising and we are watching some of the videos that we have taken previously, things like that, and use methods for formal evaluation and follow-up. So some kinds of formal evaluation, like the use of questionnaire to measure any change before and after, okay, or any follow-up. That means will there be any reunion afterwards? Okay, so sometimes we will have a reunion 2 months later, 3 months later, to make it more nice and warm, okay, for the whole group to say goodbye. Okay, so guidelines for selecting group ending program media. So what you should select: has the group participates before, what's the result, and at what stage? So you need to think about what the group stage is. Okay, so is this appropriate to the termination stage? You have to think about for all the group members as well as individual things singly. Okay, so so is it a termination for group members and individually? Sometimes it may be termination of the group, but they will stay. They are still members of the center. Okay, they may join other activities. So you may not be saying goodbye to every individual, but they will join other activities later. So can the members express feelings comfortably, okay, within the room, and you are giving them a lot of security for not non-judgmental. Okay, so you can express freely, and you can, for members, you can focus more on the future than on the past. So you have to think about how all these questions to determine what are the media of the program that you are going to do, or the contents of your group. Okay. So the group members must also pay attention to the transitional aspect of the ending phase. For example, if the group members are continuing with the other group leaders, for example, you are changing jobs and you are going to have another group leader to come. So how are you going to transfer, and how are you going to let the new group leader to familiar with the members and things like that? And if the members have finished their work, what they have learned and how they can use the learning in new experience. And if members have found the group helpful, how can they find similar source or support in their real life situation? So this is also a transfer of experience. If they find it, the group is very good. So how they are going to find such a relationship? Okay, so can they build up by themselves, or they need to find it from other source or from other area, or they can join other groups, similar groups in the same center? Okay, so what we used to have is was that we have a lot of volunteers group in one of the center that are participants. Okay, so actually, if you finish on this round of the group, you can go to another volunteers group. Okay, so if that system occur, so sometimes you may see transfer of group members from one group to another. Okay, so they can find other group members to have to be helpful, to find the same kind of experience. So individualizing the ending and transition to meet individual needs. So if individual needs is arise, you may need to talk to the person individually. In particular, if they are not joining the sessions, okay? If they start cutting the sessions, they join once and then they miss another. So you may need to talk to them individually and see what happens and what their feelings, and you should take care of their feelings individually, because that is an individual matter, okay? And because the group member is not going, right? They're not going to the group. It's very difficult for you to bring this back to the group. He's not participating, right? But you still need to cater the needs. This may be some kind of signal to ask for help, okay? For your help, to ask for your attention, and then you need to help and give an attention to these individual members. So individual may need you to refer to another group or organization. So to be more specific, so you may sometimes you may need to transfer the whole group to another organization. So that is why I always encourage you guys to know each other well, because your classmate today will be your professional network tomorrow. Okay, so when you graduate, okay, they may become your professional network, which when you need to have some transfer, for example, you may need some help from your classmates today. Okay, so that is a very important professional network. Recycling, in which we should go through similar group experience again and learn lessons missed the first time. So you may need to talk to the individual and see if he or she need to learn something again, because he or she has missed the session, or he or she is missing. And ending process in a helping relationship can trigger the deepest feelings in both group workers and members. So the ending phase may trigger a lot of feelings of group workers and group members. And all these feelings can actually help change. Okay, so actually there's a lot of chance that we will face separation in real life setting. Okay, so in our real life situation, we will face separation of our loved ones nowadays. Well, okay, I think a lot of us may lost our loved ones in during the pandemic. So we have a lot of chance of having that. And what we should do is we really need to get through all these feelings, and we need to help the group members to face the reality that we will face the loss and and we will face the end of something, okay, which we need to face, okay. So here come to the last part, and which is also very important, especially if you're preparing your test next week. So you will find this session very important. Okay, so is the outcome evaluation of your group, so which will come up in the test next week. So why we are talking about evidence-based social work? Because it's a trend nowadays, which we are very, very important to look at the evidence. I have a graduate, oh, you all know her, Heidi, not last week, this Monday. She helped me to share with the class in school social work. She was talking about interprofessional collaboration. She mentioned that one of the things that we social workers seldom do was to read the research articles, which she found when she worked with the occupational therapist or the physiotherapist, they will say, okay, let us go back to the article, let us go back to the literature and find out the evidence, and we'll say that, let's do some training like this, and there's evidence saying that to do this, we are going to help the kids to improve, so on and so forth. So, and what Heidi was mentioning was she seldom see social workers doing this, and what she's seen was social workers will say that what we have learned at the university is useless, and actually we are using our common sense. Okay, so don't worry about all the research, and don't worry about all the literature. We are not going to take care of this, and we just think about ourselves. So that is the phenomenon. Okay, and actually I can tell you it makes our social work professional not sustainable. If we want our profession to be sustainable in the future, I do encourage all of you to read the research findings, not only during your class here at the university, but when you become a professional, when you see a phenomenon, when you would like to tackle that phenomenon, don't just chat among yourself or use what you call common sense approach, but you go back and read some of the research. I'm not asking you to read our research. Our research may be very poor, but I think there are a lot of excellent research in the world, and you can learn from that, or you can actually apply some of those to your work. Okay, so that is evidence-based social work. That means we based on evidence. The evidence is there are evidence telling us that it is effective, and so I am using this. Okay, I'm using this. I will always use cognitive behavioral therapy as an example, because you can see a lot of manualized cognitive behavioral treatments for adolescents, for young people, for primary schools, children as well. And you can easily find the protocols from all these research papers. And you can also easily find how long it should take. For example, a typical cognitive behavioral therapy would take for 12 sessions, are typical, okay? But actually, in reality, you'll find it very difficult to run a 12 sessions group. So sometimes you may need to use your talents. Maybe you are doing an 8 sessions group, you modify it into 8 sessions and things like that. So, but you still based on evidence. That means you are using the evidence to tell people that I'm doing a cognitive behavioral therapy group, and I'm using the assessment tools. I'm using the contents there, which is evidence-based, which has improved, successful elsewhere, and I'm using this. Okay. So evidence-based social work will expect the social worker to be an evaluation researcher. So don't think that researcher is a big thing. Okay, I can tell you a lot of the research paper written in the world, in England, in US, they are not coming from academics. They are not coming from universities. So you can always go to the research papers, and sometimes you can see some research papers that come from National Council for Protection of Child, okay? For example, some agencies. So why it's happened? It's because those social workers elsewhere in the world, they are not just social workers, but they are evaluators. They are doing evaluation, okay? So, so that is why we need evidence-based social work. And the fourth point there is talking about accountability. And nowadays, as I've mentioned, a lot of your future work will be on a project base. Your work will be 3 years, 4 years, and you have a funding body and someone is going to fund your projects and your salary comes from there. And you need to be accountable to the funding body, and you need to tell them that your work is actually effective. So how? Okay, so you need some indicators to let them know that it is effective. So we need to integrate research and practice in foundation competency of student, and student must learn to use the research. So this is why you must learn research, although a lot of you don't like it. So what are the process or practice? First of all, we do observation. Okay. Listen to their reports. We are conceptualizing their behavior. That means making sense of the behavior through some theories or through some literature, and how it's related to a group process, and what are the hypotheses of your intervention. Okay, so take for the example of cognitive behavioral therapy. You will be hypothesizing that a person's cognition, emotion, and behavior are linked together. And the person's difficulties or person's problem is because of the irrational thoughts or irrational belief that a person has. Okay. And so you are trying to work out through the process to help the your participants to reduce the irrational belief, and eventually they have a better emotion and better behavior. So you have to think about how you're going to conceptualize, how you are going to theorize the problem. Okay, how you theorize the problem, conceptualize the problem will actually bring to your intervention. Okay, so if my thoughts is like this, my rationale is like this, so it doesn't really matter what kind of rationale. Anything that is from the social sciences, anything that is from the social science literature will work. Even though a lot of you like empowerment approach, even though empowerment approach is also okay. Okay, if you are thinking about it's because the person did not develop his own potential to the full, so that nowadays he or she has problem. And why I'm going to do, and when I see the problem like this in the group, I would suggest to use something, okay, whatever, okay. Even it is something that you would like to empower your group, it doesn't mean that you only can use empowerment approach. You can use a social goal model approach, which is, of course, behind this empowerment, but which is, you don't really need to stick to an empowerment approach. You can use cognitive behavioral approach, because what I think or I articulate from my clients are, they have irrational thoughts about their own ability. That is why I'm using some cognitive behavioral approach. Okay, so I would like to change their thinking. So how? I'm going to use some participation. Okay, they are going to participate in a project. And the projects, I'm going to enhance their participation and enhance their ability, and eventually I change their cognition. Can I do that? Yes, of course. Okay. So I'm telling you that you can have a lot of imagination or a lot of association as well, as long as it is linked up with the theory. okay, of change, okay, the theory of change. That is the theory of change I mentioned. It is not a particular theory, but the theory that you like to use to change the client, that is theory of change, okay? And so you have intervention and you have validation, and you observe again to see evaluate the effectiveness, and that is the process. So it is a bridge between practice and research. You identify the empirical process, building the instruments. So as I've mentioned, you may use a lot of instruments. Normally what we do is to use, for example, I think you have learned this. I'm not sure whether you have gone through the module on evaluation. And actually, you can do it repeated measure design. For example, you measure before and after of the group. So I'll give you an example, which I think you will understand more easily. So when we talk about the instruments, sometimes you think that is very difficult, right? Actually, it's very easy. For example, if you are interested in going to see the emotion and behavior of a child, it is a very common scale that we'll use. It is free on the web. Okay, the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. Okay, strength and difficulty questionnaire. So you can use all this. How to calculate, actually is all there. Okay. You can use this before and after if you're working with young people. Okay, so if you're working with young people, you can use it can be used for young people before age 16. Okay, so if you are working with a group of children and young people, you can use strengths and difficulty questionnaire, which can be completed by their parents or by themselves. And you can go on not wasting time to find the Chinese version. Actually, a Chinese version is well validated and is available on the web. It's free. Okay, I just click on the Google and it comes up. Okay, the strengths and difficulty questionnaire. So you can use strengths and difficulty questionnaire before and after for repeated measure. Okay, and then you can do some statistical tests, which you have learned, t-tests whatsoever. T-tests are all simple ANOVA, okay, ANOVA analysis of variance before and after, or you just use some correlation, Pearson correlation, which is very common and very easy to do it. You just click the fill button in the SPSS, and then you can do it. Okay, so you can try, okay, using this, and you can think about all this next week when you complete your final quiz. Okay, so what are the indicators? So how can I decide the indicators? The best practice is come from the research articles or research evidence. You can see some of the research evidence, and I stick to the example of cognitive behavioral therapy. For example, if I'm working with a group of anxiety children, and then when I read the articles online, I can see that a lot of researchers will look at the anxiety level, depression level. A lot of researchers will look at the irrational thoughts that they have, or some of the researchers will also use strength and difficulty questionnaires to see how their emotions have changed. Okay, so it is very easy to decide what are the indicators, as long as you just spend a few minutes and you glance through the research articles. And as I've mentioned before, it is much more easier if you read some of the meta-analysis. If you have some systematic review or meta-analysis of cognitive behavioral therapy, the writer has already summed up all the indicators for you. So you can just put them down into your groups, and then it becomes your indicator. So when people are asking you why you use all these indicators, you said to them because it has been done by lots of researchers in the world. They're looking at all these areas. So if I'm working on a parenting group, for example, what is so common from the literature is they will use parenting stress index. Okay, oh, this one you need to buy it, you need to pay for it. But lots of the researchers will use parenting stress index. They will use the parenting style index, okay, things like that. Okay, so you will use all this as an indicator. And all these indicator, why we are using all these indicator is because the theory of change, or the things that we are going to manipulate in the group, is leading to all these changes. So that means, take for an example, if we are working with a group of parents in a parenting group, so why we are measuring the parenting stress? Because when we have a group together, and all the parents will all in the same boat phenomenon, and they have they know that I'm not the worst person, I'm just one of those persons who suffer from the same kind of experience, and everyone is experiencing the same problem, who have the same developmental stages of our adolescence, so we all face the same kind of problem, and they will have the release of their own stress. And that is one of the key reasons why we are using parenting stress. And that is one of the intervention points that we are going to have in a group process. And the other thing is we are going to measure the parenting style, change in parenting style. Why? Because we have, if you are doing some cognitive behavioral changes, or you are using some social learning changes, you would like to change them to a more positive parenting style. And that is what you're focusing. When we see the theory that if parents are adopting a more positive parenting style, they will have a more positive, they will have a better children themselves. So we use parenting style scale, okay? So what indicators we are going to use is actually related to what are the theory of change, or what we have in mind that kind of groups is going to bring about the change. So we have that indicators, okay, right? Okay. So when you design your group, you need to think about your theory of change and how the theory of change is changing what kind of variables in that phenomenon, in that problem, okay? For example, depression is very common. Why depressive kinds we always use cognitive behavioral therapy is because when we see our depressed clients, we always see that they have a very negative thoughts or biased thoughts in their life. And then they become depressed. So that is why we are using cognitive behavioral approach, and it's found really effective because we are changing their thinking pattern, we are changing their schema, okay? No matter what programs or what activities you are building in, but you are using cognitive behavioral approach, and then you're changing their condition. And eventually it brings about the changes in condition. And what you are going to measure is some dysfunctional attitude. Okay, it's very normal. Okay, it's just bring rationally from one to another. Okay, so I'm helping you next week. Okay. So similarity of effective group practice, both start with empirical observation. So you have an observation, hypothesis. Okay, you have some hypothesis, what is going to happen, why this happened. And in your group, you are always testing your hypothesis, where your hypothesis is true or not. Okay. So difference of effective group practice and effective research, and actually they comes all together. Okay, and don't think that effective research will only is independent of the effective group. If you can run an effective group, you can have an effective research, or if you have a good research, you will have a good practice. Normally, that is why we see a lot of successful groups in the research paper, because they are well articulated theoretically, and they are using a lot of evidence base to do their research. Okay, so whether it's inductive, deductive, logic process, implicitly, explicitly, or systematic and systematic observation occurs. Okay. So the integration of practice with research in group work requires systematic use of common empirical process, as I've mentioned. The empirical process that you're looking at the literature, and you are making sense of the phenomenon with theories, and then you think about how the theories are going to bring about changes, and then you operationalize the measurements. Okay, how are we going to measure the change? And you measure the outcome variables. Okay, and that is what we are. That's what I've mentioned. The outcome variables. For example, strength and difficulty question. It talks about the emotion, the behavior of the children. Okay, up to 16 years old. So you can see all these changes. Okay, or these are the variables that you are looking for, or that you are going to manipulate. So definition of instrument is a systematic repeated observation throughout the practice process, and all the instruments like this, suggestions, actually a lot of empirical evidence. They have done a lot of research, and they have done a lot of tests before it comes up. Okay, and using it. So we don't need to build one by ourselves, unless you have some really new findings. Okay, you find something new and you are going to build another one. Otherwise, we just use other people's work. Is good enough, because they have spent lots of time. Some of those scales has been done for 20 years, for over 10,000 or 20,000 samples. So you can see the validity and reliability of that particular kind of scale. So no need to spend time in building your own, unless you have some new finding, but you just based on the others. You can easily find lots on the web. So positive side of instrumentation. So you're combining research and practice with mutual benefits can be most practical. It can be a feedback on the group process. You can see what's been done group, improving the quality of group treatments. So you can see which dimension and which variables is going to be helpful when doing this kind of intervention. So some of the indicators we use have no change, just like one of the articles that I've written for so long, so many years. But that article, I've just sent it to editor for editing yesterday. And in that paper, we have a lot of indicators that was not successful, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, it doesn't really matter. That means some of the things that this kind of groups are not going to help. Okay, so we know that this kind of group is not going to help this kind of indicator, and that is good enough. Okay, so I can only focus on some of the major or the most important indicators which has changed. Okay, so we can see the process, and we can see what is going to help in this kind of group. Okay, so don't worry about some kind of indicators is not working and some are working. Okay, yeah, we can improve the quality later. So no one can do it once the first time and it's the best. No one can do it. Okay, we normally will build up our experience, and eventually we can do better. We can also encourage members' involvement and foster open reaction to personal feedback when we see all the indicators, instruments, clarify members' goals, increase the objectivity of measuring members' change. So it's more objective rather than just saying by yourself that client A has talked a little bit more than before. He has improvement in confidence. That is just what your description, and doesn't mean that he has improved in self-confidence by saying that he or she has a little bit more conversation than before. So we can also use for comparison of individual members, okay? And we can also facilitate longitudinal assessment of changes for longer time, longer change we can notice, okay? And sensitize to multi-phase nature of change in group process, improve communications, allow practitioner focus in the group effectively, and aid the establishment of process for norms of group and provide members some content framework. Okay, you can see all the positive sides of instrumentation. So some of the negative sides, members and workers resistant to give and receive information and feedback. Some of the clients didn't really like to fill in the questionnaire actually. Okay, I understand. Okay, some of those participants will just take, if we have 5-point scale, they just pick 3, okay, and then give it back to you. Okay, they just don't bother of reading. For some of the sharp members, they just guess what you expect from the question, and they give you the best answer. Okay, so we all know this. But don't be discouraged by all these exceptional cases. I can tell you these are very exceptional. You may see some very extreme filling in 5%, less than 5% or 3%. Okay, so you can just, if it is out of the norms, and you can just ignore it. And but for those majority, I can tell you majority are really sensible, and they will fill in the form honestly. Okay, so don't being discouraged by those who just so another thing is to make sure that your questionnaire is not that long. Okay, it's not that long, which is the length, from my experience, no longer than filling in, no longer than 15 minutes, 20 minutes is the maximum. Okay, maximum is 20 minutes. Okay, so using this measure in a simple pre-post test design, so you can use a pre-post test, that means before the group and after the group. So it is very important in practice evaluation and clarifies outcome, and that is my research. My research always do that. So I always use pre and post measurements, and I reduce and repeat the measure and over to see any changes. Okay. So select the measure, what to measure, conceptualize, operationalize group process, as I mentioned. Okay. A repertoire of data collection strategies, appropriate instruments of validity and reliability, availability, easily score, assess key dimension, provide data of inferencing dimension. And only if that is very new and you can't find any relevance work, and then you build your own instruments. Okay. So these are some of the instruments you can see. If you really need to construct your instruments, construct for evolving group themes as a member, role expectation, group norms, self-disclosure, interpersonal feedback. Okay. So you think about the implications and usefulness of process instrumentation. If you are evaluating the process, okay, why you are evaluating the process. So if you are evaluating process, you may evaluate the leadership style, and you may evaluate how the decision making process, the running of the group, administration, whatsoever. This is the process evaluation. Okay, and you can select both process and leadership measures, evaluate both process and outcome, use instrumentation, analytical group process, and derive analytical base for future group practice. So you can do a lot of time repeatedly, and then you eventually find whether this measurement is valid and reliable. Okay. So how to ensure that your program or your group is ready for evaluation? The objectives are readily and properly set. Performance indicators, I've mentioned about this. Intervention, what are the interventions? I've mentioned about this. Your intervention should stick to the indicators and objective. So is the intervention well planned? The intervention is geared towards the objective, and the intervention is geared towards the performance indicator, and how to make sure your intervention is executed properly. Okay, so if it is done by several workers, so you have regular meetings to regulate, to make sure that it is executed properly. So is your method for evaluation rigorous, and what are the resources you are required? So measuring outcome, behavioral counts, goal attainment scale, self-rating scales, value clarification rating. So sometimes we have, for example, your parenting attitude or parenting belief scale. Okay, I've also used that. Rating on skills and understanding of self situation, task accomplishment, and other psychological instruments. There are lots. Okay. So that's the end of what I would like to talk. Okay. 有冇咩問題啊？最後一堂啦，大家有冇咩問題想問啊？有冇嘢想問？今日最後一堂啦，下個禮拜做 test 啊，下禮拜四嚇，大家記住，禮拜四嚇4點嚇。咁希望大家入 Zoom 就4點05分就入到嚟啦。你睇到我嘅 announcement。有問題想問
？Angel 啊，我想問下咧，考試方式咧，其實係咪都同上次嗰個 quiz 一樣，即係都係有分題，跟住我哋答咁樣啊？
我咪擺咗落個 announcement 度咧，有冇睇啊？
announcement
係啊，我喺 Canvas 都 announce 咗啦，我直頭俾咗個 example 俾你哋啊。
哦，唔好意思 ，miss 咗。
唉，我又 share 多次啦，唉，你班人仔，唉，成日都係咁。
miss 咗添。
等我一陣，等我一陣。
好。
我開緊個 Canvas 啊，等我一陣。等我一陣啊，我開緊啦，開緊啦，就到啦，就到啦，就到。OK， 唔緊要，慣㗎啦，唉。希望第日啲老師都係咁啦，對你哋，唉，我都對你哋都算好㗎啦，唉。不過今日最後一堂啦，我喺 CDU 嘅最後一堂啦，都同大家 say goodbye。咦？點解我 share 唔到嘅個 canvas？ 點解？唔緊要啦，我讀俾大家聽啦。總之喺個 canvas 度，我讀俾大家聽。stop share 先，冇嘥大家時間。Final quiz 下個禮拜 44號4點10分到6點40分，個半鐘頭嘅。咁希望大家咧4點05分就到啦。咁呢個我會俾一個 case 嚇，咁跟住咧就第一你要做 conduct 個 needs assessment of the above clients。嗱，今日我 lecture 已經講咗啦，點樣 conduct 個 needs assessment。其實我今日講咗好多有關於 next week 嘅嘢啦。咁跟住咧我就問第二條咧就問咧邊個 group model 你會用嘅嚇，其實邊個 group model 都唔緊要，你最緊要 give 一個 good 嘅 reason for that group model。OK？唔緊要嘅，有啲同學好中意 social goals， 有啲同學好中意呢個 remedial 唔係 reciprocal model， 你好中意empowerment 嘛，成日都好中意 empowerment， 咁跟住 reciprocal model 啦，咁樣冇緊要，你嘅俾 justification 我點解？跟住我今日講咗好多啦，點樣 theory of change。theory of change 乜嘢 theory 都可以 change 嘅嚇，睇下你點用，又係你俾個 justification。咁同埋咧最尾就講 indicator 啦。咁我今日亦都講咗啦。咁我今日亦都講咗好多點樣去做嗰個 indicator。咁所以今日其實就都幫咗大家好多咧，就係點樣去即係做下個禮拜個 quiz 咯嚇。好啦，仲有冇問題？
我暫時冇啦，唔該晒。
好，仲有冇第二個同學有問題咧？咁你睇翻個 canvas 就知㗎啦。好，係咪真係要用咁仔細研究 support 啊？唔使嘅，你即刻睇下有冇啲，即刻有冇啲睇你嗱聲上網啦，因為 open book 啊嘛 ，open notes 啊嘛，隨便上網㗎嘛。你可唔可以即刻上網咧？即刻用 Google Scholar 睇下有冇啲 relevant 嘅 research finding， 即刻睇到 indicator 乜嘢咁樣咧？可唔可以咧？咁其實我話俾大家聽，唔係我咁樣做緊㗎。我話俾你聽，你唔好以為咧有啲學者做緊。我最近我睇到明愛咧有一個 research， 佢哋做啲 research 同埋咩？佢哋最近都嚟緊一個發，因為我見咧要收錢，所以我冇發俾你哋。因為佢都 send 俾我，咁但係我見佢收成1000蚊嗰個發佈會，咁鬼貴，我唔俾你哋啫嘛。咁咧就其實佢哋都係做緊嘅，其實即係我即係講緊唔單止明愛嘅，其實好多東華三院啊，好多家福會啊，佢哋做緊好多 evidence-based practice 嘅而家嚇，咁佢哋好多發表㗎啦，而家唔係學者嘅專利嚟㗎呢啲嚇，所以你唔好好似我咁用研究 support。而家你嘅師兄啊 Louis 啊，所以 Louis 上一次present 完啊，阻咗我成半個鐘頭，就係同我傾，我而家遲啲又會幫佢哋機構做一啲嘅發佈，睇緊佢哋啲 research 啊咁樣。其實佢哋做咗好多㗎嚇。咁我話俾你聽，好多一般嘅 social worker 係你哋啲 graduate， 係你遲啲 grad 咗之後你都會做，因為你而家機構都要求大家做㗎嚇。咁所以你而家最好實習咧，即係唔係實習，即係而家考試嘅試下用。你真係試下上網揾下 Google Scholar， 你七一個 keywords， 你已經出咗好多出嚟。你試下有冇啲 reasons 嘅，或者有啲喺香港做過嘅，你睇下啲 indicators 咯。好，仲有冇乜嘢大家想問？如果冇就祝大家好運啦嚇！咁過埋下個禮拜就我會喺度到6月尾嘅。咁如果大家想揾我就可以揾嘅嚇。咁就如果教書嚟講就最後啦嚇。今日真係最後一堂啦。咁我成日冇教晒啦。咁樣咁最後一堂啦。咁多謝大家。咁亦都好開心識到你哋，見到你哋咁啊！第日江湖再見啦嚇。咁總會呢個圈好細嘅，總會見翻嘅總會見翻咁總有機會再見。咁就有需要都我未知會點樣將來咁但係始終都會江湖再見。好，多謝大家，好多謝你哋。
好，江湖再見。
好，拜拜。
拜拜。